Hi, everyone. This is Alexander Carlos. Welcome to another edition, a brand new edition of the Alexander News Show. So today, it's right now 7:42 Eastern Standard Time, Thursday, September 9, 2021. 2 days from the 20th anniversary of the September 11 attacks. And I'll be putting some tribute videos on my YouTube channel of the September 11 attacks. And the YouTube channel, of course, the one we're live from now, Alexander News Show. Let's kick things off first with some info that I want to give you all. At 8 o'clock, first and foremost, at 8 o'clock, hopefully, Lord willing, and there's no technical glitches, because last time it was a complete disaster, I have civil rights and defense attorney, Mr. Gary Kollin, practices law out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, USA. He's going to be on the show, and 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in about 7 minutes, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right now, 7:43. And if you want to call the show and you want to speak to Mr. Gary Kollin or text the show, you can do so at 786-652-7240. Get this number down, ladies and gentlemen. And also, if you want to follow the show, you can go to Twitter, and anything about the show, anything about news, political stuff, follow me, Alexander Carlos. I'm always posting on Twitter almost every single day. It's basically news, my thoughts, my opinions. Alexander News SH. Instagram as well is another way to get a hold of the show. Both of these social media platforms have direct mail. And you can also get a hold of me through direct mail, direct message, or making a comment on one of the posts. I get all that. I read it all. Twitter is Alexander News SH. Instagram is Alexander News Show. And of course, you're free to comment and make your opinions. I'm willing to dialogue. I love to dialogue. I don't need to agree with you 100%. You don't have to do with me the same thing. You don't have to agree with me 100%. Those of you that know me know where I stand. Anyways, to support the show, please, any amount of money that you can donate to the show will be greatly appreciated. This will go directly all to the show to make the show better, for me to go out there into the community, because my main focus is Miami, Florida, USA. And then, of course, down the road, I'll expand to Broward County and beyond, much more. The more, things take time. I'm a one-man show, but you can go to Cash App, download the Cash App, and go to once you download it, you just find me with Cash, the little $, Alexander News Show. All right? So, and again, you can call or text the show now, or right now until 8 o'clock is open forum. We can talk about anything you want. 786-652-7240. Okay. And when Mr. Gary Kollin comes on the show, we are going to discuss police misconduct, mainly that, some defense law, the case that he's representing the plaintiff. He's suing a couple of Medley, Florida police officers. I'll see if he's able to talk about that, but I think he will be able to. He filed a lawsuit against the main police officer, and I have the video, by the way, of the horrendous police misconduct and what I call police brutality. They went to the poor man's home, the man that individual that Mr. Gary Kollin is representing. They went to his house, the Medley cops, there's 3 of them, without a warrant, without having any jurisdiction, and they just basically manhandled him. It's senseless. But the video's on my YouTube channel, and I've also posted some other videos of the city of Hialeah. That we did the show yesterday. We called the mayor's office. I called them. You can go to that show from yesterday, early afternoon, and the secretary got the phone. For the record, the mayor was not available. He's never available. Carlos Hernandez, the sleazy political figure. I'm pretty sure he's a nice gentleman, probably has a good family. He's a family man, but he's just a horrible political figure. He is one of the worst mayors Hialeah has ever had, probably in the history. If you go to the video, the last documentary that I did, you will see the illegal dumping, and it's still there on Northwest 107th Avenue, on the east side, on the left side if you go north, from 138 and 170. That's the annex area of the city of Hialeah. And I'm looking to see if I can sue them, the city of Hialeah. I mean, that's going to be a little hard to do. I'm going to be realistic. That's going to be a little hard. That's it's the truth. I mean, it's going to be a little hard to do that. Anyway, yeah, that's going to be hard to do, because you got to find it. It costs a lot of money. You got to find an attorney. I've got a couple in mind. It's a long shot, but I will make an attempt. You got to find an attorney that's willing to take the case on, and more than likely, more than anything, pro bono based. And it's just me as a resident, because a lot of people just don't care. But you find the illegal dumping, you find the park, Sparks Park, Mylander Park, horrible conditions. I mean, you know, and then you go to 25th Street, and by the way, horrible conditions. Mainly, it's the grass and the weeds. It's just, they're about this big up, like well, it's bigger than this, but it's about four feet up high, as dead palm trees. I mean, dead palms. I mean, the trunks and with no leaves. I mean, it's horrible, and it just litter as well in the parks. And then, of course, you go to 25th Street, East 25th Street, and it's horrible there. I mean, just go to the video and see it for yourself. I'm going to part documentary. I want to do 3 parts. The elections for the city of Hialeah are coming up. Esteban Bobo's running against the nicest. I forgot her name. Forget that lady's name. Yeah, I wear the glasses because I need this to read. But Isis Garcia, is that her name? She used to be a council member. Yeah. And but she's got no shot to win. I mean, don't get me wrong. Mr. Bobo has to do some campaigning. He's got to work. But he's a slam dunk to win the elections. I mean, forget that. But is he going to fix the problem? That's the question. I emailed Mr. Bobo. So, Mr. Bobo, I'm going to throw this at you, and then I'll edit this video. And, of course, it'll go out. It just takes time. And again, in the next couple of days, I'm going to be doing a couple of other videos. I'm going to be busy through Sunday doing videos, editing, adding stuff to the YouTube channel, including my interview, by the way, with Mr. Gary Kollin. But before I go any more further before I get into that part, I'll be doing interviews about videos, short and a little long, about the $3.5 trillion bag of goodies that the Democrats, Communist Party USA, wants to put in. And I want to give props to Mr. Senator of West Virginia, Joe Manchin. But anyways, I'm going to be busy. I'm going to put a lot of videos, and starting tomorrow through Sunday, you got to go to the Alexander News Show and just see everything that's going on there. It's going to go on my YouTube channel, and I also would be putting some on Twitter. Not all the videos that go on the Alexander News Show channel on the list of videos are going to go to Twitter. There will be a couple, and also on my Instagram. But anyway, so yeah, Hialeah is pretty bad. I mean, it's taking like 5-6 steps back. You know, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I mean, you just go to the video, and then there's another video of the graffiti. Oh my God, the graffiti in the annex area. There's another video of the grass in the annex area, which is pretty bad too. Big in the annex area, like 97th Avenue. A lot of issues with the annex area. That's why I want to sue the city of Hialeah for not providing police round the clock. The agreement with the county was 2 officers per shift at any given time in the annex area. There's not even, the most that they put here is 1. And it doesn't only cover this annex area. That officer covers the other part, the south end of 138th Street. I mean, no fire station. And a lot of times, by the way, a lot of times response times can be 10 minutes. And also, just so you know, there's no officers. A lot of times there's not even a police officer, nothing close by. They're like 10 minutes away. If there's an emergency, you're pretty much screwed. You need 10 minutes. And then other times when they're not available, then the Miami-Dade cop comes from the Northwest Station, which, by the way, they have 12 officers most of the time at any given time in the Palm Springs North area / going into Miami Gardens. That's very little cops. I mean, Miami-Dade is short-staffed with police. But anyways, and speaking of police, hopefully the interview where there's no glitches, Mr. Gary Kollin, civil rights attorney, defense attorney. By the way, a very nice person, very nice man. He's got a ton of experience, and I'm so excited. I'm so pumped up. I'm going to get to interview him again, and hopefully he'll come out. I mean, I can't do an interview on the phone, like talking to someone on the phone. I mean, an exception is like if I make a phone call like I did yesterday, calling the mayor's office for the city of Hialeah, and I spoke to the secretary. That's an exception. I mean, but if it's a legitimate interview that I have planned, like I tell you, if I call somebody, and I want to do a lot of that. I want to be calling different people as a surprise, of course. Listen, hey, this is the Alexander News Show. This is Alexander Carlos. You're live. I'm just letting you know because it's, I'm making a phone call to you, but I want and I want to know certain things. That's, to get to the bottom of things. That's some of the things I want to do on this show moving forward. When I do a show, I want to call political officials directly, their offices. More than likely, I'm not going to get a political figure because, excuse me, I'm sorry if I said this, they're cowards. They do not want to come on my show because I don't carry a water cooler for anybody, whether you're Republican or Democrat. Anyway, but I will do it because it's for entertainment purposes. For entertainment purposes to get straight up answers. But that's okay. I get a hold of them through, through Twitter or Instagram. By the way, my condolences to Mrs. Daniela Cava, the mayor of Miami-Dade County. Her father had passed away. He had the COVID-19 vaccine, but he passed away. He still passed away. I believe he did get the vaccine, but unfortunately he passed away because he had of the COVID-19 again and other related health issues as well. I mean, he was 87 years old. He lived a long life. But my condolences to Mrs. Cava. I already paid it to her in a private message. Oh yeah, I speak to Mrs. Cava. Oh yeah, I speak to her. I mean, not all the time, but anyway, so before I get Mr. Gary Kollin, let me give you some information that you would like to know. There is a poll that came out that Americans favor Joe Manchin's strategic pause on Democrats' $3.5 trillion spending plan. Okay, so there was a poll survey of 974 registered voters. And let me see if I can get you the answer. So the poll, I'll just give you this little tidbit because I got to get into Mr. Gary Kollin now in the next few minutes. The poll revealed stark partisan differences, with Republicans supporting Manchin's position by a 78 to 22% margin, and Democrats opposing him 48 to 52. But that's so tight. So tight. Independents are split, backing Manchin 52 to 48. So in rural areas, 7 in 10 respondents supported Manchin. So if you give me a Democrat with a Democrat mentality, conservative like Mr. Joe Manchin out of West Virginia, and he's going to run for president versus whatever crap the Republican Party. And listen, this is the way I see this. I'm a Trump supporter. There are times that he's gone off the wall and I've gone against him. But, I'll take Trump any day over the old guy that's the man with Alzheimer's. I'm sorry if I have to sound so mean about this. That's in the White House right now. like straight up. Like the only thing he's done good is his response to the COVID-19. And I give him credit for that, which, by the way, you need to take the COVID-19 seriously. But Joe Manchin, if you give me 100 Joe Manchins, conservative Democrat, and you give me Joe Manchin for president, I can live with that. I mean, straight up. The problem is our political parties are screwed up, and this country needs a third party. Will it ever happen? I don't know if it'll happen or not. I hope it does. I mean, I'm America first. That's my mentality. Thanks to Donald Trump. That's why I love Trump. America first. It's and I favor Joe. By the way, Mr. Gary Kollin, are you there? All right. So we'll talk $3.5 trillion spending plan that the Democrats want to impose on us. And by the way, if they pass that plan, then I'm going to be paying higher taxes, and so will Mr. Gary Kollin. He'll be paying a lot more taxes if that $3.5 trillion bag of goodies passes. And I'll take a Joe Manchin any given day. How you doing, Mr. Gary Kollin?
I'm doing fine. And yourself?
Doing good,
Can you
sir.
hear me? Okay.
Yes. So let me go ahead and let me see if I can put you.
Ah, there we go. I see myself.
I'm so happy because what I had to do, I'll give you a little secret. I listened to my best friend who I've learned all this that I'm doing, all this streaming, I owe it to him. He told me, you need to get out of that very bad platform that you were using, and you need to get into the other one. I'm not going to send a minute, you know it, but I'm happy because this is now going to be a very real interview. But anyways, I'm grateful for you to come on, Mr. Kollin, attorney, civil rights and defense attorney, Mr. Gary Kollin. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing wonderfully. And yourself?
I'm doing great, and I've already warmed things up a little bit. I've already mentioned to the whole entire world that you're going to be coming on, and I'm super excited. First of all, how was your day, sir?
Well, it's always a mixed bag. It depends on, sometimes it's, parts of the day are great. Parts of the day, unfortunately, people call out, you help a lot of people out. You really do, even if they're not your cases. But sometimes people are blind to their own problems, and I try to help them, but unsuccessful. And they tell me what the law is, and I try to explain to them the situation, but they're immovable. They want to achieve the goal they want, and you can't always achieve it, unfortunately, and they're not satisfied. So I become the bad guy. I always try to be the good guy.
Well, Mr. Gary Kollin, you're not a bad guy. I know you a little bit now. You're not a bad guy. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to please everyone, and you're not going to be able to help everyone in this world. In a perfect world, you could, but you can't. And you are very much needed in society. Your services are very much needed. By the way, you can go to garykollinlaw.com for info on his services and get in touch with him if you're interested. The first
one thing they have to know, it's spelled with a K and not a C, because people end up doing that.
Oh yeah, I have it down here. Gary Kollin, definitely with the K, kollinlaw.com.
I know you do, but people unconsciously do it the other way. It's the story of my life.
That's why I wrote it down on below us. And by the way, you can call and text the show if you have any questions. Please, all I ask all of you, my supporters, by the way, before I go any further, please like this video. And if you missed the interview, that's what's great about YouTube. Technology in the new digital age is you can play it back. And this is going to be for life. I mean, this video will be for the next 10, 15 years. That's for this. But just like it, press the like button, share it, follow the Alexander News Show, and hit the bell for notifications, because I do a show every single week, and I'm going to start eventually doing it 2 days a week. And to support the show, please go download the Cash App and go and look for the $slash Alexander News Show. He's going to go straight to the show. Any little bit of money will go to help the show. But anyways, Mr. Gary Kollin, if you guys, ladies and gentlemen, want to get a hold of the show right now and text or call, just be respectful. You can call right to 786-652-7240. You can also send, you can get a hold of me through tweets or the Instagram. Okay, so Mr. Gary Kollin, my first question to you, this is a stupid question, but I'm going to ask you. Question. Well, I'm going to ask you.
A stupid question. Sure.
Well, how difficult is law? That's my first question to you.
First of all, you have to have an undergraduate degree. Then you have to go to law school for 3 years, and then you take the bar exam, and you become licensed as a lawyer. You can be licensed in every state, Puerto Rico, you're licensed in the federal courts. There's 11 of them, 11 different circuits, and then there's the circuit for Washington, D.C. I can go on and tell you all the different memberships, and each state may have their own requirements because you need to know the specific law of that particular state.
Wow.
I practice almost exclusively in Florida, and I know Florida law. So when you graduate law school, you've got a whole mixed bag of different different areas of the law you study in, and although you understand the principles of them, you have not put them into effect in particular matters. Becoming a trial lawyer, which is what I do, there's a combination or a whole mess of things, not a mess, but a lot of things that you have to put together. You have to know how to speak in court. You have to know the law. You have to know how to pick a jury. You got to know how to do an argument to the jury. You know how to move around the courtroom, and particularly now in the day of COVID, it's even more difficult because of wearing the mask and the plexiglass shields and things of that nature. But you come out of law school, maybe you've taken a class where you've done a couple of fake trials, but they're not the same type of situation as if you were in a courtroom. That's some of the things. People generally specialize in different areas of the law. You could go into personal injury litigation. You can do commercial law. You can do probate and wills. You can do divorce law, criminal defense. And then there's subcategories within those, which is like mine. My subcategory is police misconduct.
Wow. Okay. We're going to get into that.
I sue police officers and departments for violation of people's rights. They include false arrests, excessive force, illegal search and seizures, things of that nature. There are others, rights to privacy, infliction of emotional distress, and those areas. So that area of the law is also particular about certain principles. And people often call up and say, oh, I have this matter, landlord-tenant. I'm sorry, I don't do that. That's not an area of my practice. And they'll say, but you're a lawyer. Well, it's sort of like being a doctor. You're not going to go to a heart doctor and ask about your stomach. And because a heart doctor has studied that area and knows it very well. And you're going to go to a gastro doctor for your stomach. But the gastro doctor does not know all the medications, all the tests, all the treatments, because they have to study in their own area and keep up in their own area. And that's sort of like what I do.
That's on. Let me ask you this in regards to law. What's the first that a young 18-year-old high school needs to look into? What do they have to do so that they can practice, to their goal of becoming an attorney? What's the first thing they got to do?
They got to go enroll in college. That's the first thing they have to do, and they have to be aware of keeping, a clean record so that they'll pass through the requisites and the background examinations that the bar does before. The bar is the Florida bar. Here in Florida, it's the organization set up by the Florida Supreme Court to supervise lawyers. And they have to know that. One of the things that you bring to mind with regard to that, people create their email address, and they do crazy things with email addresses. And then by the time it gets done, they have a whole group of people who know that address. It's important, if you're going to be a professional, to have a professional address for your email.
Okay.
And that's something, it's not something in school, it's something practical that people should realize, that this is going to carry on the rest of their life. But you have to get an undergraduate degree. And my undergraduate degree, I know you're going to be surprised, is in biology. One time I thought I wanted to be... I
do remember you mentioning that.
I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then after college for a year, I worked as a computer programmer. And I had a liberal arts education in college, meaning you just didn't study science and biology. You studied other areas, social sciences, humanities, things like that. It's important just in your own life. Don't just go into pre-law. At least that's my opinion, because you could be doing law school and you can be doing this your entire life. Okay, so have some diversity. Perhaps understand about art or music or something like that. Also, because you want to carry on a conversation other than about law. So I think it's important to probably not study pre-law in college, but because that's not going to be the issue whether you go into law school, when you go to law school.
What are you to get into law, to become an attorney?
Well, I'm not really sure, to tell you the truth. I know I did attend a couple of trials and I found them fascinating in regard to just the dynamics of a courtroom involved in that whole thing. And I also have, I don't know, the temperament or mentality or the way I think to do appellate law. And Carlos, I think this is really important for people to understand about appellate law. Okay, people always say, I'm going to appeal the case to the Supreme Court. I'm going to have those things. And I'll give you an example. It's not a perfect example, but it's the one I generally use. And it's why people have to understand that appeals do not always encounter the issue that they want. You see, appeals are a review of what went on in the courtroom as far as a mistake of law is concerned, and not a mistake of fact. So if the jury believes one person over the other, that's a mistake of fact. But if the jury is given wrong jury instructions, that's a mistake of law. Or your attorney objects, and the judge allows the evidence in. I'll give you an example here. It's not perfect. It's the one that I found people understand. Is you have a car accident. You say the other person was responsible. The other person says you're responsible. So you sue each other, and you go to court, and the other side, the party suing you, testifies. And that person testifies, and he does all sorts of weird things and weird faces and everything else on the stand, and is contradicted by other things they say. And you testify, you say, "I did great. That was wonderful." And he did awful, or she did awful, and that jury should vote for me and find him responsible. Well, the jury goes out, and for some reason, they believe the other person is credible, and they don't believe your side is. So they vote for the jury returns a verdict for the other person, and also determines the amount of damages. Well, you say, "I'm going to appeal that." But the jury believing one person over the other is a mistake of law. I mean, mistake of fact.
Okay.
Now, let me explain to you about a mistake in law. You have the same trial. However, when you're testifying, the other side said, "Didn't you have a car accident 10 years ago and you hit a dog?" Okay. Well, that's not relevant to the case you're trying. Well, you had an accident before, or, it doesn't matter how you were driving on the day of this event. And so your attorney stands up and says, "I object, Your Honor. That shouldn't come into evidence." And the judge says, I overrule your objection. That's what overrule means. It says the judge doesn't go along with your objection, or sustain means the judge does go along with your objection. Judge overrules your objection and allows that evidence to go before the jury. And again, the jury votes for the other person. Well, now you can take that up on appeal, because you're going to argue that evidence that shouldn't have been presented was presented to the jury. So the mistake of law is the judge overruling your objection and allowing that to go into evidence. And depending on the circumstances, you may get a new trial. But it's a mistake of law.
Wow. Okay.
Appeal. And so if a person comes in and says, "I want to appeal it, that jury made a mistake," that's not something you can appeal. And it's very important. You were asking earlier about becoming a lawyer. Well, if you hear the word objection in the courtroom, we just discussed what it means. But there's another aspect of that. Let's say the judge is going to allow in, the other side presents evidence, and the judge says, "Okay, that evidence is going to be presented to the jury," or admitted is the word. Admitted into evidence is the legal term. And it'll be presented to the jury. Well, you think it's wrong, but you don't object. And then you cannot raise that or present it to the appeals court, because the idea is you have to present it at the time it's occurring, so that the judge has the opportunity to correct the mistake. And if you don't object, the law says the judge should assume that you don't object.
What going further, if any of you want to call or text the show, it is 786-652-7240 if you have a question for Mr. Attorney, Mr. Gary Kollin. Okay. And again, you can follow the show, Alexander News Show. It's right now in Miami, Florida. The time is 8:16 Eastern Standard Time. And anyway, Mr. Gary Kollin, what's the most difficult you had?
Well, the most difficult case as a criminal defense attorney is the one that your client is absolutely innocent. You see these on TV, the person wasn't even there, and those are gut-wrenching, that you sit there and you're afraid, really. You're doing your best job, but you have this concern in you. That's as far as a trial type of thing. My most difficult case is I had a very, very distinct honor that in 1992, I was appointed by the United States Supreme Court, and I was able to argue a case before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court.
I do remember that. You argued a case in the Supreme Court.
Correct. And I hear Justice Scalia, he wrote on my side. he wrote saying I was right, and that case is now being used both at Harvard University. They take a class in what's called statutory interpretation, and every first year law student has to take that class. And I found out a few years ago that my case that I argued is one of the primary cases they study in that class. I was very much honored by finding that out. But let me just go on. The Supreme Court has only accepts about 100 cases a year for oral argument. And the Supreme Court session goes from the first Monday in October to the last day in June. So, and so they take 100. Usually there's two attorneys who argue, one for the petitioner, the person who requests review, and one for the other side, the respondent. So there's usually only two on a case. Sometimes there's three, or there might be other cases involved. And sometimes attorneys have argued more than one case. So overall, we'll say there's 200 opportunities every year to argue a case. So if you look in the lifetime, let's say 45 years as a lawyer, I'm 41 years now, I'm 68, so 45 years would be up, 73, 72, 73 years. So in 45 years times 200, there's 9,000 opportunities, 9,000 only, in 45 years for an attorney to be able to argue before the United States Supreme Court.
And you're one of those attorneys.
I'm one of those attorneys.
That's hard to do. That's extremely hard to do.
Right now, at this present time, there's over 100,000 lawyers in Florida alone.
Wow.
So what do we have? 100,000 from Florida, and there's 50 states. Not all. There's 100,000 in other states. I'm sure there's more in California and New York and Washington D.C., which is not a state. They have a lot of lawyers there, and so let's say there's over 1 million lawyers at the present time, or even more. It's got to be more than that. And so I'm one of that small group of 9,000 lawyers, approximately, that are presently alive that said they argued in the court. Now, if people are going to stay at 9,000, unfortunately, a new group's going to move in, and unfortunately, the other side, people are going to move out.
Now, you are a former state of Florida prosecutor. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. And I also, although some people speak bad of them, I was an assistant public defender. And
you're needed as well.
Right. I fought for my clients in the courtroom, on the papers, in discussions, depositions, and all that when I was a public defender. And I know there's a tremendous amount of public defenders who are superior. And there are private lawyers who are superior, and they're just like in any profession or any place in the world, there are people who are not as good. Unfortunately, there's the urban legend about public defenders that they're not good, but they are good. Depends on the lawyer you get in regard to that.
Why is that?
Why is what? Why are there?
Why is it that they have a bad reputation?
Well, unfortunately, of course, they got the higher volume of cases that's involved in it. And because it's appointed for people who have less funds, you're going to be involved in other type of crimes, or they're going to be charged with other type of crimes that carry significant sentences. And the problem, and there's one of the urban legends is they work for the state, they get paid by the government, so they're working against you. Some giant conspiracy situation. And the problems of the dynamics of the system is that they have cases that are very difficult, that are involved with people who complain that they don't deserve the punishment. I had it years ago a client, well, a client who, well, I spoke to a defendant, and he says he wanted to appeal. Again, not about the difference between facts and law, but I said, why do you want to appeal? I was convicted on a lie. What was a lie? It was raining the day, and they told me, they testified it was sunny. Well, that's what they call in law harmless error, but when that appeal doesn't go through, it doesn't become the fact that it's a harmless error. It's the attorney's fault that they didn't present it right. Person confesses, they have the evidence, they have all these other things that are really serious evidence, and then unfortunately the person who's convicted obviously is not happy, but they're going to say, if I had a good attorney, I would have won. Nobody could have won that case. When they confess, there's a video, they're caught with the evidence, they told 20 people, things of that. They got the fingerprints there, they got the DNA there, and the person there says, if I had a good attorney, I would have won. And that's part of the dynamics of the system. It's a shame. And go on.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please go ahead.
When did you get into private practice? What year?
I got into private practice in 1987. And from 1979 through the end of 81, I was an assistant public defender here in Broward County. And then from 1982 to June 1985, I was a prosecutor. From 85 to June to September 87, I worked for a specialized unit of the state called the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit.
I remember you telling me that.
And that unit is charged with investigating healthcare providers who receive Medicaid funds for fraud and matters of that nature.
Wow.
It was quite interesting. We had the system with regard to the records of when a person could have a Medicaid card and use it was much different back then than it is now because of the computers that are in effect now. They used to get paper cards every month as opposed to, let's say, like a credit card now with a strip on it. And the opportunity for fraud in that system was all over the place. Fortunately, there were occasions when we ended up investigating a clinic that we discovered that one of the persons there who claimed to be a doctor and had diplomas on the wall were not doctors. And we were able to stop that person. It was outside our sphere of investigation, but we, I'm sure, saved some lives by stopping those people who were pretending to be physicians from going on. So wow. In 1987, I went into private practice. My office at that time was in Dade County, and it was virtually exclusively criminal defense law and criminal appellate law. I also started doing federal criminal case defenses and appeals at that time. And eventually I got capable up enough, and I had the opportunity, and I applied for my case to be reviewed by the United States Supreme Court, and it was accepted.
Which, by the way, congratulations on that.
Okay. I have to tell you, thank you. This is a funny story for me, but I hope I can convey it. The Supreme, you put in, you file what's called your petition for certiorari, kind of fancy words, asking for the court to review the case, and I put it in for my client. You have to write a brief and present it to Senate, file with the court, and send it to the opposing parties. And I filed it over the summer, and it wasn't one of the things that I was concentrating about. I wasn't really thinking about it on a daily basis. And on the first Monday in October. That's not necessarily October 1st. I mean, it could be the 5th, 6th, 7th of October. But the first Monday in October, I sit down on my couch in the morning, having woken up, with my coffee and my newspaper. And there on the front page of the Sun Sentinel was headlines: "The United States Supreme Court meets today." And I'm sorry, it was on Tuesday. I saw the United States Supreme Court met yesterday and decided what cases they were going to accept for what's called the term of court. And I said, oh, it's coming today.
Wow.
And I went to my office and I'm there, and my secretary comes to me and says, "You have this FedEx." And there it was. I was appointed by the court. My case was there, and I would have to write the legal argument, which is called brief. There's a funny expression: lawyers write 10,000 words, and they still call it a brief. So,
wow. Mr. Gary Kollin, mind if I can switch gears here a little bit,
sure,
really quickly.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the misconduct that's going on
Absolutely.
in our society by police officers. And let me first of all mention really quickly further, I'm a big fan of the blue, big fan of police officers. Unfortunately, every single police department will have a couple of bad apples. And I want to ask you about the case that you're working on now, if you are able to comment on it. But before I go any further, I have one question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go on. Ask your question, and I'll come back to what I want to tell you.
What do you tell a mom and a father, parents of an autism individual that was badly mistreated by their
person with autism? Did you say?
Yes. Yeah.
A person with
I have seen, just so you know, I'm a special needs therapist. This that I do show is my second job. And I've seen cases where, for example, an autism child that's 10 years old gets out of control. And by the way, I can control a very aggressive individual. I can literally control and work it. I have the ability to do that. But I have seen cases where 5 to 7 police officers show up to try to calm a 10-year-old boy with autism who gets aggressive. What do you tell parents that have this situation where they've been badly mistreated by police officers? You know, their kid was badly mistreated by police officers.
Well, I say we're going to try and get justice for them. Unfortunately, the only thing I could achieve with these cases, I can't force a police department to discipline an officer, fire an officer, or any of that case, and that's all handled internally. The only thing I could do for those individuals is try to get them money to make the situation better in some way, getting counseling, getting perhaps a different place to live where that wouldn't remind them, a different school to go to they could use with their money, many different things. But unfortunately, the only thing you could sue for is money. And not only is it problematic in the justice system with those type of instances, later on it's even more problematic because you have these people with special needs, whether it's autism or other special needs,
yeah,
and they have to go to court. And here they come into this strange building, which is crowded with people. They have to go through the metal detectors like the airport. They have to put their goods or the possessions on the X-ray machine. And I'm sure you know, working with people with some special needs, if they got to give up their certain thing and put it away, you know, they can't see it for a few minutes, that's really going to upset them. And then they go to a courtroom and they're told whether they have to wait in the hall or go in, and then they go in the courtroom and there are people all over the place. They're all talking, they're moving around, the lights are bright, And it's a very unfortunate situation. And I've been trying to develop sort of a lesson for the judges to help them understand, because sometimes judges, like everybody, like you're talking about those your situations there, they misinterpret a person's actions and they think it's being disrespectful or something else. I mean, for instance, the Tourette syndrome, where people shake and they say words uncontrollably. A judge could say that person's just being rude or obnoxious or whatever and doesn't realize what's going on. So I hope that we will develop, at least now that we've become more aware, that judges learn about how the needs of the people before them. But I want to go back to what you said about the autism. I do have a case just like what you're talking about.
Oh, wow. Okay. Celebrate.
I'm representing a young man. He lives with his father. And this was on YouTube. I don't have the address right now for the matter, but the young man, he's 25, and of course he doesn't look. He has a beard, he's nicely trimmed. He's things of that nature, and he lives with his father, and he had just moved in with his father. They moved, and his father got the residence ready, and he's down there, and he's walking around the outside of the house, looking in the windows, things of that nature, just looking. His father told me he's probably looking at the lizards that were crawling around the windows. And there was a neighbor who, I guess, is part of like the Crime Watch group, and he sees this young man he's not familiar with looking in the windows. So he calls the police, and the officer comes there. Now, every police agency is required in the state of Florida is required to have a training program for autism and special needs. They're required to have it.
Yes,
I know
aware of that.
I know of one police agency here in Broward County that one of the employees at the department has a son with autism, high level, and she brought him into the department so the other officers could meet him and become familiar more with the situation. Not like an experiment, just to be social in a social setting. But so he's walking around. According to this police officer, he comes up to him, and my client, the 25-year-old man, starts running away. Well, if you see this guy, he never ran away. That's not his demeanor. But probably he was being yelled at by the officer and got scared and started going away. But whatever it was, the officer grabbed him, handcuffed him. The father came out of the house and said, "That's my son. He lives here with me."
By the way, hold that to your thought, Mr. Kollin. I have a phone. I have a listener who just called, and he would like to ask you a question. Is that okay with you?
Sure, that's okay. I just have to remember where I go back to.
Hello, this is the Alexander News Show. May you please stay who you are.
Yeah, my name is Alex, and I'm enjoying the show. Thanks for taking my call. My question is, what do you do when the detective wants to talk to you? And the reason why I'm asking you that is because one time I was just walking in the street, and I was going to meet my wife at a restaurant, and two detectives undercover just pulled me over, and they said, and they searched me. They didn't even ask me anything. They just said, "Hey, put your hands there." And they searched me. And the keys and my wallet, and they gave me back my wallet, and they took my keys, I guess, without knowing, and they left. And when I realized they took my keys, they were gone. And I couldn't get a hold of them. So, like, I had a bad experience with that. Is there anything that you can do? What do you do when it stops you or wants to talk to you? Is my question.
Well, there you got a good question, Mr. Gary Kollin.
Okay, well, there's three types of stops that police can be involved in. One is called a citizen encounter. One is called a Terry stop, or a reasonable suspicion. and one is a full-blown arrest. Now, any police officer can come up to any citizen or any person on the street and ask to speak to that person. And the person has the right not to speak or walk or just walk away. If you watch a lot of these First Amendment audits on YouTube, you'll see the law enforcement stop some of these auditors and for just because they're filming and that's not against the law, and the auditors won't respond back. So theoretically, there should be nothing else that's being done that should be done. And then there's a reasonable suspicion that somebody committed a crime, and the officer can stop that person and hold them for a reasonable period of time. Let's see, they match the same clothing actually, as opposed to something, and the police can like bring the witness there for identification. They could pat down the person. They can't reach into the pockets unless they feel something that is a weapon. And then the third thing is probable cause, and that is a reasonable likelihood to believe that the person committed a crime. You don't have to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt at an arrest. So,
okay.
So it sounds like to me, sir, is that they targeted you as someone that they decided to search you without rights. Now, that situation, you can make a complaint to Internal Affairs. Whether something will result out of it is highly unlikely, because in Internal Affairs, it's not a trial. If you say something happened and the officer said it didn't happen, they won't find against the officer in that situation, because they feel they can't. And the police officers have a tremendous bill of rights here in Florida. If you get arrested, Carlos, and they got all this evidence against you, and they're going to take you in and they arrest you and they start asking you questions, you don't know what evidence they have. So you're at a disadvantage. With a police officer internal affairs investigation, before they can question the police officer, they're going to complete every other aspect of their investigation. And then the police officer gets to read every statement of every witness, see every video, see every photograph, and confer with his attorney or union representative and go over everything and prepare for whatever questions there, unlike during a normal interrogation. So they can prepare themselves knowingly what's going to be asked of them in that situation. Sir,
thank you for calling, by the way. But thank you for calling. But keep going.
Okay. So I have this young man who's a autistic, and the sad, this is, we'll give the police officer that was there the benefit of the doubt. Okay. That he thought something was going, he grabbed this young fellow, he held him, and then the father comes out and says, my son's autistic. And the police officer, later on, it's on the body camera, the officer says to the father, and this hurt me a lot, because I have a daughter with special needs, and this is the officer said to the father, I noticed he had mental defects. That word is a terrible word. To say that, so that somebody has defects because they have special needs. And instead of releasing him, the young lad, at that point, the officer takes him across the street in handcuffs, holds him over there. The father's saying, that's my son, that's my son. The son is getting very distressed. He wasn't acting violently or resisting in any way, but he's very upset, you could tell. And the father is walking over, and then another police officer puts his arm on him and says, you can't go there. And it took about 5 minutes to release this boy and man, and because the police officer wanted to question him. What was there to question about? He's behind his own house. His father's there saying it's okay. And there was no reason to keep him 1 second longer. Now he very much distrusts police officers, and he's concerned when he sees them that they're going to come over and handcuff him again for doing, and that's a really sad and unfortunate situation that happened.
What's the percentage? I'm sorry, keep going. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I'm done. I'm done with that. Yeah.
I just wanted to
What's the percentage?
ask you, what's the percentage of that have no, in your opinion, that have no training on how to work and deal with an autism or a special needs individual?
I don't know, but I'm going to be finding. I can't tell you. They're all supposed to be trained within the department. I don't know the answer to that question, but I will be finding out from this police agency, the sheriff's office. I will be getting their records of all their training and who went to it and attended it. But it's not like
Broward Sheriff's Office, by the way, I'm thinking.
No, this is not Broward Sheriff. It's upstate. It's the Indian River County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
Okay. There's Broward. Above Broward is Palm Beach County. Then there's Martin County. Then Indian River County. So that's where it is. It's a smaller county on the coast. It's what's called the Treasure Coast of Florida. But I will be finding out those statistics and it's going to be a while and report back to you. Carlos, you said something earlier that you were a fan of the Blue, and you know what?
Yes,
I am too. Okay, and I have people I've known for years when I was a prosecutor, whatever, that are police officers and a defense attorney, and I have friends who are now prosecutors in the state and in the federal system, and I have great respect for them also. But I'd like to give you an analogy about police officers who are not so good and how we should understand them compared to other people. Okay. If you had a problem yesterday, you would have called a police officer. Today, a police officer, and tomorrow, a police officer. So if you have that type of problem, you'll call a police officer. If you have a medical problem, in the past, you would have gone to a doctor. Today, if you had a medical problem, you go to a doctor. And in the future, you're going to have a medical problem, you go to a doctor then. Now, we're not going after every police officer. We're going after the one police officer that caused the problem in this case, that mistreated or violated the law or something with regard to my client. Now, if a doctor did something wrong, the doctor could be sued for malpractice. And the person and people say, that's okay. You can go sue that doctor for the wrongs they did to you. But you're still going to see doctors for other reasons. And you're not saying that all doctors are bad. And that's the same in a police misconduct case. You're not saying that all police officers are bad. You're saying that one or the group of them or the few of them involved in that case were wrong. They were wrong. They did like the doctor did with the medical malpractice. So you're not going after all the doctors. You're going after the bad apple, so to speak. And if you look at the George Floyd, there's a few officers that were there, but they're not suing everybody in the department. There were a lot of fine officers that were there, and in every police department. But unfortunately, when something bad happens, it becomes the attention of others. And just like doctors, you're not going after all the police officers. So when you make that analogy as a lawyer to a jury, so that they understand what's going on, they no longer feel or they understand what you're doing and that you're not attacking every single police officer.
I totally get you 1,000%. I mean, like I said, and I'll mention this again, I'm a big fan of police. Unfortunately, there are some bad apples in every police department in this country, not only in Miami, Florida, USA, but also, this is my opinion, police academy training is too short, 6 months. I have mentioned that I believe that it should be at least 1 year of police, and there should be more training on crisis management. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. My understanding of something I read recently is that it takes a year worth of training to become a barber in the state of Florida. And it's
Okay.
only 6 months to be a police officer. Well, if you study the training of police officers for that 6 months, a large amount of the time is physical training. Then they have to know self-defense techniques. They know how to drive a car properly, use a radio properly, use a gun properly, how to direct traffic. So a lot of the skills they're learning is not ones that are that go to the practical area of the encounters between people, knowing the law, things like that. And then after they get out, every department has what's called a field training officer. So they have another police officer who's been there a number of years, drive along in second seat with this other officer, and they think for a month or something like that of matters where they got to learn the street. One of the things I always see is they don't know all the streets in our area, things of that nature. I often see on TV or on these videos that one of the things that these police officers come up and do to when somebody says, no, that's not allowed, the first thing the officer says, are you a lawyer? Well, the police officer is not a lawyer either. They get some amount of training, and unfortunately, either they misinterpret or they aren't taught well enough in regard to that.
Yeah. That's a big problem.
The FBI has its own training center in Quantico, Virginia. Also up there is a DEA. They have exclusive training facilities because they're the creme de la creme. They're the highest, and they want to make sure they teach along that type of situation. I think you saw in Silence of the Lambs, Jodie Foster was Clarice was at the FBI Academy. They don't release trainees to go out work in the field like they show in that. But the FBI training is rigorous. The background investigations are very rigorous. And then in Georgia, there's a place called FLETC, FLETC, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. It's in Glencoe, Georgia, and it's a campus where different agencies go there and have their training. And there's a limited size in there. So when a few years ago we heard one of our leaders say, we're going to have 1,000 more agents in this, going to hire them. First of all, they got to get the background, they got to have the applicants, but they don't have the size of the facility to hire 1,000 people within a year or 2 years. It's going to take time to fill those rosters in this other situation. So you're right. I've often said the same thing you're saying, is that we don't have a long enough training period involved. And we concentrate often on the wrong parts of it. I will tell you a sad thing I saw when we talk about that. Years ago, my son was a Cub Scout, and there was a jamboree at Joe Robbie Stadium where all these different groups, police explorers, the ones involved in marine matters, all different scout groups from around the country, from around the area. And I'm walking around looking at it, and then I sadly passed, and I say sadly because I'll tell you what happened. I passed the police explorers, and what was their training that they were getting? They were doing the batons with the at the end, and they were fighting each other. that was their training to be police explorers. That should not be what we're training our young people to do, is know how to fight to be a police officer.
Wow.
It was terrible. I mean, I just stood there. It was there. It was going on in front of everybody. And the instructors who were, or the leaders were probably police officers. And I don't know, they were oblivious to the fact of what they were actually teaching these young fellows and women. And it was being displayed to other young people, scouts at that jamboree. Something's wrong with that picture. Not something's wrong. There is actually something wrong, and we know what it is.
Well, Gary Kollin, before I go into the case, if you can speak about the Medley Police Department.
Okay.
Really quickly, I want to applaud you. You're trying to do in the justice system. Correct me again, because we mentioned it earlier. We were talking about it earlier. You're trying to implement a program for judges how to deal with special needs individuals, and I want to applaud you for that. We need more attorneys like yourself that will come up with ideas to try to cater to special needs individuals in a good way, in a positive way.
We have a large number of people who, because of their special needs or things of that nature, end up involved in the criminal justice system because they're mistaken in different places. Looks like they're shoplifting or something like that when they're not doing any of those matters. And these programs that are supposed to teach the police, that was something. So they have this program. They don't monitor when the officers stay in and go out. And there's an exam at the end of it. It's a multiple choice exam, and if you get enough right, you pass it. But it's nothing where there's actual instruction back and forth as opposed to a multiple choice answer situation. And they don't keep track of who went in and who went out.
Well, I want to applaud you for that and congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
Fortunately, no attorney thinks like you and has come up with the idea of doing something like this for special needs community in the justice system and working.
Well, this whole COVID thing has put a damper on progress. I'm in contact with a special needs, an autism person who runs a program, but this whole thing has put a real damper on it, and the Zoom matters for people with special needs. I can't imagine with 90% of not even 90%, we have people who have no experience with computers, and even people who have experience getting on Zoom and having these hearings. And I was on recently, and the judge was handling another matter, and we're there, and these people are talking, across the system. And one of the people, one of the persons on there cautioned them, listen, this is a public matter. People can hear what you're saying. You should be cautious. And it was rudely, one of the interns said, we're not talking about our case. We can go ahead and talk. And so they're talking, go mute yourself on the thing and call your friend up on his telephone so we're not involved. People are just oblivious to being polite and things of that nature. One thing I want to mention to you is, we're not electing judges, or they're not being appointed because they're radicals most of the time. You go into a courtroom, they're well groomed, They're wearing the robe, things of that nature. And as much as you want to be different, there's a certain level of decorum that you should, I think, show back to the police officers. I mean, to the judges. I mean, I had a client who would come there in his basketball jersey and shorts, and I say, please wear a long sleeve shirt or a button down shirt and a pair of pants, and you show a certain amount of respect in regard to the judge, which shouldn't but does get more of a favorable reaction. And I told my
Dressing
clients,
up is very important.
you don't have to dress up, but dress appropriately. Like you're going for a job, like you're going for a job interview. I told this client who said, well, the judge should accept me the way I am. I said, look, if you don't like to wear those type of clothes, bring a bag along with a button-down shirt and a pair of pants, go into the restroom before you go into the courtroom, change into the other clothes, and as soon as you come out, go do it. And he refused. But that showed a lot more than just didn't really, it showed a lot about his common sense in making decisions.
First matter.
True. Listen, people, and one of the other things that happen with public defenders, I know we're not getting to my case, but people often say, my public defender made me take a plea. They forced me into it. Well, when you go into courtroom, the judge asks you a whole bunch of questions. Are you doing this freely and voluntarily? Is this something you want to do? And many of those people complain later on that they were forced into pleas. I don't know. We can talk about this another time. I want to talk about plea bargaining, and for people to understand. If you want to do it now, or we can talk about medley, or whatever you wish.
Well, go ahead. Say one. You can make a statement in regards to that. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, situation with plea bargaining, in a lot of ways, is you don't get all you want in the situation. Person's charged with a crime. The evidence could be significant, substantial, whatever it is. And the person has to make a choice whether they're going to accept a certain, which would be a punishment, or fight the case and take it to trial and run the risks in regard to getting a greater sentence by not working out a plea bargain. That's the choices there. People are not used to those type of situations in everyday life. So I give an analogy to my clients, or have given an analogy as follows. You wake up one morning and your pinky is sore. And you go to the doctor, and the doctor examines your pinky. You love your pinky. You've had it your whole life, of course. And the doctor tells you you have cancer in your pinky. Doctor tells you you have two choices. Well, three choices. One, you can cut your pinky off, and the doctor tells you if I cut it off, the cancer won't spread up your arm and you'll be gone. Second choice is you could do nothing. And the third choice is chemotherapy. Well, the pinky soreness is being charged with a crime. And the chemotherapy is a trial. If you take the chemotherapy, you may save your pinky, but if it doesn't work, you lose your whole arm.
Okay.
In plea bargaining, you have a choice. You can take the plea and get possibly a lesser punishment, or you can go to trial, and if you lose, you can get a greater punishment. Or the third thing is you could go to trial. Okay? I mean, so you have a choice of well, trial is like the chemotherapy. And if you win the trial, like the chemotherapy works, you keep your pinky, you're out of jail, you go home. But if the chemotherapy doesn't work, the trial doesn't work, then you got a greater punishment. And so I tell my client, how much do you like your pinky? Can you lose your pinky and go on with your life or not? Or do you want to take the risk of losing your arm versus losing your pinky? And that seems that people understand that a lot better because you compare it. And that's one of the skills you have to do as a lawyer. You compare it to something that they're familiar every day with so that they can understand it.
You're not going to get everything you want in a plea bargain. You're going to have to give up something.
Well, that's true.
I mean, that's the way. With I live my life like that. I would love to have $1 million. I would love to live in Miami Beach in the beach in a penthouse.
I don't think now in Miami Beach. It's not that I grew up there, but now they're having a lot of problems. I think you could pick
Marco Island.
A better place at the present time. Huh? How about the Seychelles?
Marco Island.
How about the Seychelles in the middle of the Indian Ocean?
Oh wow. Yeah, no, that's a different place. So wow, hey, Mr. Gary Kollin, let me ask you. I'm glad I'm going to bring you back on my show. By the way, in the near future, if you're welcome to come back on the show. But I want to talk about the last thing about your case that you got going on. Your client, Mr. Rodriguez, the horrific incident that occurred in his house. I have a video on my YouTube channel, Alexander News Show. And those of you that don't know what happened, I'm not going to talk. Mr. Kollin's going to talk a little bit about it. But if you want to see everything that happened, go to the list of videos. It's right there. Okay, and you will see exactly what the Medley police officers did to this poor young individual, and his wife was witnessing this, and they're completely traumatized. I mean, this is the kind of crap to stop with police departments, not only in Miami, but all across the country. Tell me what happened with Mr. Rodriguez in reference to the Medley police officers. Please elaborate.
Okay. I want to tell you what the allegations in the complaint are, okay? Basically, Mr. Rodriguez and his wife were living at their home in unincorporated Dade County, outside the town of Medley. And these three Medley police officers, it's our position that they went outside.
By the way, one of them is Mr. Gutierrez. Mr. Gutierrez is one of the officers.
Right. And they went out their jurisdiction where they didn't have any police powers. They went into his yard, which had a closed gate, and went there and tried to arrest him by reaching our position. They reached into his house to grab him. All three officers ran in. There was a tussle. And during this tussle, this is a year before George Floyd. I make that point here because I don't want anybody here to say, oh, he saw what happened with George Floyd and he copied it. That's why he did it that way. But fortunately, Mr. Rodriguez's fiance was sensible enough, had it together enough to take out her video camera and start filming. And it shows this police officer, Herman Gutierrez, putting my client in a chokehold. And you hear Mr. Rodriguez. It's scary when you see it. I'm sure you've seen it many times. And he says, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Yes.
And that is just beyond me to think about something like that happen. And it's kind of haunting. It's haunting to Mr. Rodriguez a year and a half later when the TV's on and here is George Floyd being choked and dying, saying the same words he did. And his thoughts there that I could have died that day. My children would have been orphans, 3 kids. And what was this arrest over? The allegation he stole a $1,500 Apple laptop 2 months earlier.
I read that the video.
Okay, that
What a
became
disgrace.
so important that they had to leave the jurisdiction. Well, I studied Mr. Gutierrez, the police officer, and I discovered that in 2006 he was fired. Coincidentally, by the Miami Beach Police Department for excessive force.
I have that on my media, by the way, listed.
Okay, he was fired for excessive force by the Miami Beach Police Department, and he was eventually hired by the Medley Police Department and given full police powers. Although Miami Beach Police found that he had violated his code of conduct.
Did he work for Virginia Gardens too? Virginia Gardens is a little village.
He went from Miami Beach to Virginia Gardens, and then to Medley. Virginia Gardens seems to be they pay a lesser amount, so they seem to be able to pick up these officers. It's interesting that officers are required to have a psychological exam in their cases. So if you look at Mr. Gutierrez's psychological exam that he had with Virginia Gardens, there's no mention of the what happened on Miami Beach and any event involving any misconduct. So that tells you 2 things. 1, he never mentioned it. And 2, the village of Virginia Gardens never provided information. Virginia Gardens, village of Virginia Gardens, never provided that information to psychologists. Now, how do I know that? Because I've spoken to this psychologist, and I said, "Were you provided that information?" And he said, "Absolutely not. I would have never written the report that way that I did if I had been provided that information." So was it an act of concealment? Was it intentional? Was it by accident that wasn't provided? But that's true about what happened. It's going to be a very interesting case. It's going to take a while. The charging document, which is called a complaint, it's the longest one I've ever written with full details in it. You can, if you want to, you could put it on your thing for people to download or look at it. It's 92 pages.
I definitely will.
It's 92 pages.
I'm in the process, Colin.
Okay. It's 92 pages. It's 369 paragraphs. And there's
Did you send, by the way, did you send me that?
I thought
what you're
I
mentioning
did.
right now?
I thought I did, but if I didn't,
I'll you if I did. If I got it.
Okay. I thought I did, but if I didn't, I'll be happy to, instead of you having to download it, I'll send it to you because it costs money to download it from the system. But
I'll personally go get it.
Pardon me?
I'll personally go myself and get it. Sometimes stuff get lost.
I can send it to you. No, I'll send it to you in an email.
Okay.
And so it's already in PDF.
Let me ask you this. We're out of time, but just want to real quick. Is the town of Medley Police Department, do they have a history of conduct?
I don't know their history.
I mean, it's a joke. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Kollin.
I've heard rumors, but I haven't been able to find anything that substantiated that. You know,
I'm sorry, I have to mention.
Okay, go on.
Why do they even have a police force? I mean, it boggles my mind. What a waste of taxpayer.
They have 37.
It's warehouse. It's all warehouses, man.
They had 37 police officers or 37 employees in the police department in Medley. The population is somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 in Medley. And I'm not sure how much acreage is there. I've never been out there, but as you said, a large part of it is
square miles.
Okay, is an industrial park. And I discovered.
I'll tell you right now. Go ahead. While I'm looking this up.
I discovered in looking at it recently that the mayor of Medley, come on, take a guess. How much does he get paid a year?
100,000.
Double that.
200,000 a year.
Right, and also.
Who's the mayor of Medley?
Roberto, I think it's Martel, but I can't be sure off the top of it. He, and that doesn't, I don't know what his expense account would be. And I don't know if the town of Medley provides health insurance for him and his family, or there's a retirement package. But as far as direct salary is concerned, it's over $200,000 last time.
Well, it's 6 square miles. Oh, 5.98 square miles. That's what Medley, Florida is.
Okay. So it's not that big, but
it's trailers. People that live there, their homes. That's it.
Okay.
And
well,
it's
I haven't
elderly.
been there. Well,
I go by there all the time. That's Pepe Diaz's district, by the way.
Well,
Commissioner Pepe Diaz, another. I call him the suck-ass poser because all he does pictures.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know anything about it. I live up here in Broward, but if you want to check, I don't know if the trailers there own the property where they're on, but you can possibly check what the millage rate or the charge rate is for the land there and see if they pay any property tax based on what goes on there. I don't think most of the citizens know how much the mayor makes there or how much revenue comes into the city.
It's a disgrace what they did to your client. And I certainly hope, and I'm going to pray, and I'm going to do everything in my power to expose this, that your client gets justice.
Well, I just want to, you were saying about a history. I just have to tell you about one of my other cases very quickly. And that is, I had a client whose last name was also Rodriguez. And we sued the Broward Sheriff's Office for what happened to him and his wife, and they were arrested. He was tasered, things of that nature. And after 9 days of trial, the Sheriff's Office settled for $350,000 for what they did to him. Okay? That was like in November or December. The following March, the main police officer in that case, and you might have seen these videos, goes up to a guy on crutches in outside a convenience store, slams him in the face and knocks him down. I mean, the guy is horribly injured, and claimed that the guy was attacking him. But he didn't know there was a video camera from the convenience store showing the whole thing. Well, that officer was eventually convicted of battery on that individual. I disagree with the sentence the judge gave him, which was probation with a felony conviction with 1 day a year in jail for, I think, 4 years or 3 years of his probation. And then the sheriff's office paid out over a couple $100,000 with regard to that officer again. The sheriff's office did nothing. They had already paid out a substantial amount of money, and they did nothing to do any discipline with regard to that officer. And he was allowed to continue on. A leopard doesn't change its spots. He was brutal with my client, and he was brutal again. And
wow.
that's an example of what you're talking about the bad apples. You see, that was two things by the same bad apple. So
Unbelievable. Mr. Gary Kollin, who I consider legend in the professional
thank you.
law community, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, because you presented not only in the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. That's extremely hard to do, but you're a shooter. You have a long legacy, and you're still kicking. You're still going strong.
Oh,
I will have you
every
back
day.
on my show. Yes, sir. I will have you back on the show, and I thank you
Thank you.
for a news show.
I perhaps next time we'll talk about one of my first civil rights cases, which was that
Oh,
had
absolutely.
gone on that had gone on for years before I became an attorney. I became an attorney in public in '79, and it had been going on for years. And in 1991, I stopped it along with another lawyer, and that was people who were in jail, who went to court, and they were tried, and they were found not guilty, did not go out that door in the back of the courtroom immediately. They had to be taken back to the jail. They had to go change into their uniform and stay there for hours. They were innocent people, and they were still held in jail. And that was horrible. No one else did anything about it. 1991, we got rid of it. Okay? And that's my first case. Okay.
I definitely will bring you back on the show to discuss this in the very near future.
My
And I
pleasure.
want to say thank you for appearing on the Alexander News Show.
Okay. We'll do it again. I'm going to sign off.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Gary Kollin. Ladies and gentlemen, that is interview with defense lawyer and civil rights attorney, Mr. Gary Kollin. And before I close out the show, the $3.5 trillion goodies that the Democrats want to propose, there's a poll that came out, and I'm going to put it on my Twitter, Alexander News SH. And by the way, you can go to Alexander News SH on Twitter. Follow me, Alexander Carlos. I post opinions. It's my opinions, whether you like it or not. Alexander News Show on Instagram. To support the show, download the application, Cash App, Alexander News Show. Cash Alexander News Show. Like the show, please. Like the videos. This particular show. Hit the bell for notifications, and follow it because YouTube recognizes it, and we need to get there. And follow all the videos. We discussed Hialeah, Florida, this disgraceful mayor. There you heard, Medley Police Department. Their mayor makes $200,000 a year. But isn't that nice? I mean, why do they even exist as a government? But talking about the $3.5 trillion bag of goodies, most Americans don't want this to pass. This is going to go, and if it gets passed, and it doesn't look like it will be passed because Senator Joe Manchin is saying, no. It's too much money. It's going to kill our economy. So I will be doing a show about this early next week. Anyways, I'll put it on my Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in to the Alexander News Show for the 9th of September, 2021. Have a great one. Bye.